In this episode, we're going to look at getting the gearbox in and roughly mounted, cutting out some more of the bulkhead, making some plans around the kind of floor pan and bulkhead area, along with getting the new suspension mounted and getting some tyres fitted on the wheels and hopefully getting it rolling. So next thing we're on with is cutting out for the gearbox to go in. We need to make a gearbox tunnel. Tunnel will come after. First thing is going to be cutting the floor out. Now, we might end up cutting a lot more of that of the floor out yet. Most likely we will, but we've got to get the floor cut out to get the rear of the gearbox mounted. On the Jag and traditional inline rear-wheel drive engines, there's two side engine mounts which go into the subframe. That's easy, that's done because the subframe's mounted. And then there's a mount at the back which goes onto the kind of rear of the gearbox, and that stabilises the engine. We've got to cut out for that. Luckily, it lands about where the gear stick would normally be. We're going to end up with a really short gear linkage. That's not a problem, but it's just something to bear in mind with where the handbrake and where the rest of the floor is going to get cut out. We'll come to that later, but really now it's just about cutting some more of the floor out, right up to where the front seats mount. I don't really want to touch those seat mounts if I can help it. I know I've mentioned in the past, or I might have mentioned about I might put the Jag seats in here. The more bits you begin to chop out, the longer it takes to put things back. And there is also a nice strengthener piece under here as well, which I would like to keep. So really, I want to leave these original seat mounts in. So we're going to cut up to that point, and that should hopefully be long enough. I've had a rough measure and it looks like it will be. So it's going to be a case of chiseling out a bit more soundproofing and then just cutting the floor out. So we've got the floor cut out, as you can see, and then this is basically where this goes. It goes a bit further back, I think about another 30mm back. But because of where at the minute my chassis rails end, I may end up turning it round because the bolt holes are actually offset, and it doesn't really matter as long as this piece is in the middle. But we'll see. It might not make that much difference. It's just an option I've got, you know, because the rear bolt holes, or what would be the rear, come past where my chassis legs end at the minute. Obviously, they're going to be extended all the way down the floor, but at the minute, I just want to get something in. So actually, this will go underneath the floor, obviously, and it will go level with the top of the chassis legs that we've welded in. So what I need to do now is I'll need to cut out, I probably need to cut out this ridge that I was hoping to leave in, but I'm going to have to cut that out and start thinking about how I'm going to extend my chassis legs out to take this. But of course it can't be any higher than the top of the chassis legs. Top of the chassis legs are floor height, which means I know where the beginning of the tunnel is going to start, and it's a little bit narrower than what I'd want. If you think about if the gearbox tunnel was to be shaped like this, for example, it doesn't leave a huge amount of width for actual footwell. So I need to have a think about that. But yeah, I need to chop a bit more out now that I can see and I can kind of drop it into position. Chop a bit more out. It's going to come a bit further back, and then yeah, it really is a case of trying to figure out how we're going to get this thing mounted onto the original chassis legs I've got. So I've now got that bracket clamped in kind of roughly where it wants to be, just to give me an idea of how I'm going to fix it to the chassis rails. Like I say, it's going to be a bit temporary to start with until we can get underneath the car and beef it all up, and until I know where the gearbox tunnel is going to go. We want to get the gearbox in to really work that out. So what I've done for the time being is I've cut some more 3mm plates, primed them up and drilled holes in them, and I'm going to bolt them onto the bracket. The bracket has like huge rectangle holes in it, which really are to gain the adjustability of kind of when you put the engine in, getting that pin position on the back of the gearbox right. So I'm going to have to spend a bit of time making sure that my plates are bang on in the center of the big rectangle holes in the bracket, and then it's a case of clamping it up underneath the car, which I'll probably just screw down to start with, or something like that to hold it up temporary, or maybe I can clamp it. And then once we're confident we've got it in the correct position, I'll put a few tacks on, and then we can try the engine and gearbox back in. Right, so it fought us a little bit, but it's in, and I'm very happy because this is the first time the engine's been in with the gearbox, and I can see where the gearbox is going to go, and it's not as obtrusive as I thought it might be. I know what the physical size of the gearbox is, but until you see it in the hole, it's very difficult to actually visualize it sometimes. Some things are easier to visualize than others, but it has, it's given us more to think about, more to look at now. And there's quite a lot of things we can now start to do because the engine is in its kind of final resting place. I've put the gear shifter on, the gear selector, just so we can get an idea of some of the slight issues that we've got, because the engine is quite high in the car. Basically, I mean, it's the wedge Princess. They're quite, they're not very high. It's a bit Lotus Esprit, I guess. Probably offend a Lotus Esprit owner. But yeah, this is my version of a Lotus Esprit, built on an Austin Princess. Because the gearbox is quite high up, obviously the prop shaft is quite high up. The prop shaft is basically going to run through where the gear stick is, because the gear stick's in the middle. And we're going to have to make a tunnel for the prop shaft, obviously, and it's going to have to be generally a little bit bigger than the prop shaft itself, and the gear shifter really needs to go on top of that. Now we can offset it if we wanted to, one side or the other, but I don't think it would go much lower than where it is now, sat on top of the handbrake, which is quite high. Obviously we're going to have to shorten it right down because it's more or less in the back of the car, but there are quite a few things we can start to think about, and again, one of those is the gearbox and prop shaft tunnel. Now that we've got it in, we can start to visualize it. I can start to think about where I'm actually going to sit in the car. Originally, I was just going to keep the kind of standard driving position because then it makes the back seats fine, things like that. The more I think about it, the more I might be better off bringing the seat back a bit. It'll make the gear shift problem a lot easier, because right now the gear shifter is miles away from where the stock one is, and the stock one is in a relatively comfortable position for the stock seat location, as you'd expect. But we've moved it back, at least 16 inches really. So that's, you're not going to move your seat back 16 inches because then there's going to be no room for the back seat, and you're not going to reach the steering wheel. So we're obviously going to have to shorten the gear shifter linkage down, which is okay, that's fine. I was expecting how to do that, but it's just where we want it to end up, and where we want the seat to end up, and where we want the steering wheel to end up. But we're also at a critical point in terms of we need to finish those chassis rails off. We can't do that until we got it on the lift. At the minute, the lift is full, so we can't actually get the car on the lift. There are other things we can do, but it's just navigating now which are some of the better avenues to go down. And one of them right now is probably starting to figure out this gearbox tunnel and where our bulkhead's going to be. There's nothing really stopping us fabricating some of the bulkhead, and we can see where it's going to land now. So that's probably one of the next things we want to start doing. I'm going to create an inch or 25mm box section frame, which the bulkhead is basically going to attach to. It'll all be welded, but it's just the easiest way of doing it. I'm trying to keep it, easy to fabricate. So we'll start to create a bit of a framework that goes around the gearbox and down the gearbox towards the back of the car, and then we can fabricate the bulkhead against that. Once we've got that in, we can start to attach the bulkhead to the strut towers, and that'll tie in a lot of strength there. And we can start going forwards and backwards with actually starting to weld a lot more material in. The only thing we've got left to cut out of the car now is the tunnel for the prop shaft. I don't want to do that until I've got the chassis rails finished off, because I know the floor's going to become, it'll just be at a point where there's no strength left in it. So lots to do now, and this is where the planning of it becomes quite crucial, because we don't want to get things wrong at this stage. All the critical dimensional things are in, but now it's a case of trying to make it look pretty, trying to figure out where we're going to attach our pedal box and things like that. There's lots to think about and lots to get on with, but realistically the next thing is starting to look at the bulkhead area. Just to satisfy my curiosity really, because I've sat in the seat now at roughly the height the seat is. The height of the gear stick we can change a little bit, but the length, there's only so much we can take off this stock linkage before it becomes basically inoperable. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out 13 inches and then just tack it together again, just to satisfy my curiosity really, and just to have the gear stick in a more realistic place. Then I can, I guess, be 100% in that I don't want to change the engine angle to drop the prop shaft and gear stick down. I don't think I do, because there's still a bit of modification we could do to this whole linkage yet. But I guess I'm getting a bit excited and I want to try my gear shifter in so I can sit in the seat and play race car. What I've done is I've just drawn a line down so I can keep the orientation of these two pins the same, because this is the part, when you move the gear stick, obviously it goes forwards and back, but this is obviously crucial in getting between the gates. So we need to make sure that it stays in the correct orientation. So when I cut, it's just a case of lining the lines back up again. Right, so I've shortened that right down. About 12 inches was as much as I could take off it. Any more than that, it was going to start to become a little bit difficult to actually use any of these components. I can maybe take a little bit more off if I wanted, but I've got it kind of propped up at that so that it's more or less parallel. That would have more than enough clearance on the prop shaft there, or I think at least anyway. It would come up more if I needed. And to be honest, that's absolutely fine. Sitting in the original seating position, this is all the way forward. So this is roughly, I guess, where I'd have it, because I'm 5'7". So I want to be able to build the car so that taller people could drive it. I mean, realistically, it's only going to be me, but if taller people wanted to drive it, they would be able to, and that's fine, because between the steering wheel, which I roughly know where that goes, and then the gear stick, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't actually need to go much further forward than that anyway. My only concern with having such a short gear linkage is it's probably going to vibrate quite a bit. But yeah, I've satisfied my desire to know now. So it's really a case of cracking on with some more fabrication on the bulkhead. Bit of time has passed and I've thought about it more. This happens a lot. Because a lot of this just require a lot of thinking about. And I think I want to get rid of all of the rest of the inner wheel arch and bulkhead section that I had left. It's going to allow me to make it, I guess, easier to make, but also neater. We'll end up with putting more new steel in. So that's the route I'm going to go down. I'm going to basically chop even more out. But before I go ahead and do that, because I'm going to have to chop all of the strengtheners out of between the inner wing and bulkhead section, the front end's going to get a bit even floppier, I think. So before I do that, it's basically time, I think, to get it on the lift and get those chassis rails made, finished off, started, whatever, so that we then got a really solid platform to build on then. As I've explained previously, I essentially want to build a chassis underneath the car that the body is basically just welded on top of. So that's what we're going to do. Engine back out again, front suspension on, tyres on wheels, and then we can roll it around there and get it on the lift. So this is kind of the time to talk about suspension. I've obviously been building it all to fit the original suspension, and one of my concerns going into this is that on the S-Type chassis, there's not really any kind of upgrades you can get. You can't really get any aftermarket parts for an S-Type, and it's taken a bit of Googling, but predominantly the XF is basically the same underneath. It's more or less the same kind of chassis, it uses the same engine, same subframes, etc. And BC Racing do a set of coilovers for the Jag. Again, £1,000, so they're obviously really good quality coilovers, fully adjustable. I didn't really want to spend that kind of money, so I was kind of originally just planning on just using some lowering springs or something like that, which is why, again, I was trying to keep the rolling height of the wheels the same. But having now kind of lived with the car a little bit and I know kind of how it's going to look, I knew I wanted to get it quite a lot lower. So fortunately I managed to bag a set of used XF coilovers off eBay for £350. Again, not a car that I guess there's a lot of demand for aftermarket parts for, else I probably would have paid a lot more money. But yeah, somebody had a set for sale, so I've got those. We're going to be able to like totally customize the ride height of the car now, and then not just the ride height, but also like spring rates. I'm anticipating that the XF springs are going to be way too stiff for what I need on what is probably going to be about a 1300 kilo Princess. But yeah, having these is going to open up a lot of options in terms of getting the car to drive right and also just look right really with the static ride height. So I've already given them a quick test fit. I know they fit into our new strut towers, so just in case of getting these on now, I've already fitted the back ones, and then we can yeah, get it rolling. So coilover fitted, bit of a mission getting that one on. Seems like when they've been tightened, the bottom saddle bracket has been probably a bit over tightened in the past. It's super tight over the bushing on the lower arm, so I had to kind of open it up a bit to get it on, and when they're aluminium, that's a bit hard to do. But I've got it on, I've got the ride height set roughly where I think it wants to be for a car with no engine in. There's going to be a lot of adjustments on these, which is probably going to get super tedious, but it is what it is. And I've now got tyres on the wheels and got a wheel back on. So as I explained before, R888Rs, I've actually got a pair of used R888s on the back. They're used because, as I explained in the previous video, 235/50/15 is only made in one tyre, and that is R888R, and at the minute there's none in the country until about April. So luckily I managed to find a part worn pair. I wouldn't normally buy part worn tyres, it's yeah, not generally something you should do, but they're probably never really going to be used. They're only going to be used kind of for mock-up, so I didn't mind, and also it gets the car rolling. I didn't really want to be waiting until like, you know, April, May time to get the car on wheels. So got this one on, looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to seeing it down, do the other side, and then we can drop it off the stands. I was about as proud as anything because I think it looks so cool. At the minute, the problem is, of course, the wheels look far too big for the car because they poke out, they don't have any wheel arches, and the wheels are still bigger than what I would like really. I would have liked a 14-inch wheel, was obviously never going to happen. But I've given it a clean off. I brushed it off, kind of an indoor dry wash, I guess. Cleaned the roof because it was all starting to get really manky. It was covered in dust, and it's nice to give it a clean off so that you can remind yourself of what the car really looks like. So yeah, it's all clean now. The tyres are fitted on the wheels. Again, it's always nice. You can try and imagine things as much as you like, getting the profile of the tyre right. I didn't want skinny tyres or low profile tyres. I wanted the tyres to look fat because then they look old, they look more retro. You know, you don't get low profile tyres on cars of this period. So I wanted the tyres to look right, they do. The back ones specifically, I'm really happy with how they came out because I almost didn't go for a 9-inch wide wheel because I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get a tyre that would look right on the wheel. So I'm really happy with that. The ride height of the car is, again, as good as I could hope, given that, again, I've worked all this out, you know, off of the Jag, and you can do as much measuring as you like, but there's going to be some elements that you're just going to more or less have to wing it on. So to get to this point now is, as far as I'm concerned, a success. The car is rolling. You know, I can push it back to the workshop. I've given it a clean off. It looks nice, you know. But yeah, the wheels look too big because they stick out. And I'm confident that once I've made some wheel arches, it'll hopefully make the wheels look a bit smaller again. I think when you look at it square side on, the wheels don't look so big. So that's the challenge, I guess, as the project progresses, is to try and make the wheels look like they fit the car, which I think is doable. You know, we're working with what we got. So yeah, that's about it for this week, really. We'll probably notice this progress on this project starts to slow down a little bit over the next few weeks, which is not what I originally intended. But I guess as time has gone by, I've kind of fallen in love with this car more and more, and I kind of want to build it really properly now. Not that I wasn't building it properly before, but I kind of want a really nice car when I'm done. And that's going to involve spending a lot more time on it than I wanted to spend. But I think it'll be worth it. We're going to try not to drag it out and kind of record all the boring jobs as well. There's a lot of panel welding to do, and there's so much of that on YouTube. It's just not really what we're about, and I don't really want to spend hours filming it because it does take twice as long when you are filming it. So we're probably just going to focus more on update episodes going forward, and then only really talking about the significant things and I guess the cool stuff, turbos, exhaust and things like that. So still a lot to do, and yeah, now we can get those chassis legs finished off now that we can get it on the lift. So thanks for watching.